Hasn't it been a wonderful and exciting summer of sport? From the glitz and glamour of the Monaco Grand Prix to the spectacle of Royal Ascot, to the excitement of the World Cup and the strawberries and cream that we all enjoy during Wimbledon. From the Tour de France to the Open Golf at Royal Birkdale. It's been an exciting and interesting summer of sport. And of course, last week, crowning the summer of sport was the opening and the first few days of the Commonwealth Games here in Glasgow. When we began our reflections under our theme, A Summer of Sport, we looked at different sports in the Bible, such as wrestling, archery, boxing, swimming, and weightlifting. And so to conclude our reflections under our theme, A Summer of Sport, we're going to bookend again by looking at some sports in the Bible. And today we want to look at chariot racing. Chariot racing. Now, whilst you won't find spectator chariot racing in the scriptures, in terms of the high stakes life or death chariot races that you might see in the historical epics such as Ben-Hur, the book of Nahum, the little book of Nahum in the Bible, poetically describes the chaos of invading military chariots racing wildly through the city streets. In Nahum 2:4 we read these words: "The chariots dash madly through the streets, they rush around in the plazas." Nahum 2:4 describes the terrifying, unstoppable assault on the Assyrian capital of Nineveh by invading forces, chariots racing and storming through the broad streets and literally crashing into one another due to the sheer chaos and volume of the attacking army. The verse's vivid imagery serves as a historical prediction of the siege of Nineveh in 612 BC, and a warning that God's justice and absolute control cannot and will never be thwarted by human might. In other words, what Nahum writes is not just a military scene, it's a picture of God's judgment descending on a city that had long opposed him and oppressed his people. Nahum prophesies that Nineveh, once the most powerful, the most brutal and feared empire in the world, will be entirely leveled. The lightning-fast chariots riding through the city represent the inescapable nature of God's divine judgment coming upon people, demonstrating that no city, nor nation, nor people is beyond the reach of God's justice. You see, the Assyrians thought they were in absolute control, and here we see, as Nahum writes, an element of poetic justice. They will finally be on the receiving end of the very same devastation they inflicted on others. And so the takeaway point from the reflection today, as we think about chariot racing in the Bible, those chariots representing the inescapable nature of God's divine judgment, however circumstances might dictate the opposite, remember that God is a God of justice and that God is in absolute control.